Okay, we are going to move ahead to another chapter of microeconomics, that is chapter number 6. The title is Theory of Production, Returns to a Factor and Returns to Scale. So this theory of production, is studied or analyzed in two different ways. One is returns to a factor and the other one is returns to scale. So in the previous class also we have discussed that the supply of a product, any supply of a commodity or product, depends on the cost of production. So again, this cost of production, where does it depend? So this cost of production also depends upon the two factors. So physical relationship between factors and output, and the second is the price of factors. So this supply of product depends on the cost of production, and further in return this cost of production depends upon the physical relationship between factors and outputs and the price of factors. So factors here we would mean the factors of production: land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. Those are the factors of production. So this cost of production will depend on the prices paid to the factors, which is factor payments, and the relationship that happens between the factors and the output. So in this theory of production, physical relationship between inputs and outputs are studied for both the short run and the long run. So in this theory of production, the relationship between the factors and the output is studied under two conditions, that is in the short run and also in the long run. So in the long run, as we have said, all inputs can be varied. So in the long run, even price elasticity, demand is very elastic, because things can change when time is given, enough time is given. So even in this case, in the long run, all inputs can be changed, or all inputs, the inputs that is used for production of a commodity can vary or varied. While in the short run, some of the inputs are fixed. In the short run, some inputs have to be kept fixed, because all of a sudden everything cannot be changed. So in the short run, only some inputs are kept constant. So therefore what we have is, in the theory of production, two types of returns to factors are analyzed. So because of this long run and short run condition, in this theory of production there are two types of returns to factor which are analyzed, that is returns to factor and then returns to scale. So returns to factor, what does it mean? So when we analyze returns to factor, we are going to analyze how the input changes. Production means giving out output by using inputs. So how the let me correct myself. So when we are trying to analyze returns to factor, we have to analyze and see how the input. So it is input and not it is output and not input. So earlier I have written here input, but change it to output here. So returns to factor means we are trying to analyze the situation where how the output changes when one factor or one input is increased, keeping other factors constant. So we are going to analyze and see how this output changes when one factor or input is increased, keeping the other factors constant, because returns to factor means short run. Short run, we cannot change everything, we cannot change all the inputs. So only some inputs are increased or changed, other inputs are kept constant. So in this returns to scale, we shall see how this output changes when there is a change or increase in the inputs of some and other factors of inputs are kept constant. The next one is returns to scale. So returns to scale, we are going to analyze how output changes when all factors in the production functions are increased in a certain proportion. So in this returns to scale, since it is considering the long run, all the inputs or all the factors of production can be changed, and change in the sense it is increased in a certain proportion. So when all these factors of production are increased in a certain proportion, how will it affect the output, or how will the output changes? That we study under returns to scale. So here we can see that returns to factor is considered in the short run, and returns to scale is considered in the long run. So after giving the introduction, a brief introduction about the theory of production, we shall see what is a production function. So the title is given here, transforming inputs into outputs. So production function is all about transforming inputs into an outputs. So the definition is, it is the functional relationship between physical inputs and physical output of a firm with a given state of technology is known as production function. So in simple words, production function would mean the relationship between the inputs and the outputs of a firm with a given state of technology. So that is a production function. How the various inputs, the physical inputs, are used to produce physical output with the given state of technology of a firm, that is the production function. So algebraically we can represent the production function like this. Q equals function of LKDM, where Q is the quantity of output that is produced, which is the function of LKDM, and this LKDM stands for the quantities of inputs. So L stands for labor, K stands for capital, D stands for land, and M stands for raw materials. So Q, or output, is the function of all these inputs, that is factors of production. So this equation shows that the quantity of output, that is Q, produced depends totally upon the quantities of factors used. So this Q is dependent upon all these factors. That is equation. That is the meaning of this equation. So more precisely, we can define production function as production function states the maximum quantity of output per period of time. So per period of time is also considered here, that can be produced from any given quantities of various inputs with the given technology. So with the given technology in a particular period of time, the maximum quantity of outputs that can be produced by using the given quantities of inputs, that is the production function. And we have to know two things when we study production function, that is production function must be considered with reference to a particular period of time. As I have mentioned, time is considered, so it has to be considered with reference to the particular period of time. This production function express a flow of output, the flow of output resulting from a flow of inputs in a specific period of time. So it has to be considered in a specific period of time. So that is one thing that we have to keep in mind when we study production function. And secondly, production function of a firm is determined by the state of technology. So the state of technology is also considered. So state of technology would mean when the technology advances, the production function changes, with the result that greater flow of output can be obtained from the given inputs, or smaller quantities of outputs can be used for producing a given quantity of outputs. So when technology advances or increases, with a given small amount of inputs, output can be increased to a larger quantity. So we have to keep in mind that production function of a firm is determined by the state of technology. And it is important to note that, the production function describes a purely technical relationship. So it is a purely technical relationship between the physical inputs and also the output. So it has no reference to monetary cost of production. It is just the technical relationship. No monetary cost is considered here. So the value of output and prices of factors are not considered in the concept of production function. It is only the technical relationship, and the value of output and also the price of factors are not considered in the concept of production function. Now let us see some of the concepts of a product. So concepts of product. So in this concept of product, we have total product, average product, and then marginal product. So regarding this physical production by factors, these are the three concepts that we have to discuss. So this chapter is talking about a producer's behavior, and we have discussed in the previous classes or chapter, from chapter 1 to 5, we have discussed about a consumer's behavior, or from the consumer's point of view. And now chapter 6, we are discussing from the producer's point of view. So in the theory of chapter 3, theory of consumer's behavior, we have studied what is total utility, what is marginal utility, and we have discussed the law of diminishing marginal utility. So in case of consumers, we are discussing about utility, how a consumer gets his or her utility while consuming a particular goods and services. But from the producer's point of view, we have to see the product, what type of product is produced, and what is the average product, what is the marginal product, and what is the total product. So from consumer's point of view, we have to see the product here, and in case of consumer, it is the utility that we study. So in this production, which is the producer's behavior, we are discussing about the product, and there are three concepts that we have to consider here: total product, average product, and then marginal product. And we will try to explain these three concepts in the tabular form and also the graphical manner that we have discussed in the consumer's behavior, that is law of diminishing marginal utility curve, and presenting the three concepts in the tabular form. So before going to the tabular and then graphical representation, let us see the concept of all these three production or product concept. So what is a total product or total physical product represented by TP? It is the physical product, or to be precise, it is the total physical product of a factor. It is the amount of total output produced by a given amount of factor, given the amount of other factors or inputs. So it is the total amount. So total output which is produced by a given amount of factor. And you will see that as the amount of factor increases, holding all other factors or input constant, the total output will increases. As factors increases, as input increases, total production or total output will increases. But we have to keep in mind that the rate of increase in total product varies at different levels of employment of a factor. So the rate of increase is different at different points. But the total product, literally, it is increasing when input increases or factor increases. So that we shall see in the tabular form and also in the graphical manner when we discuss the law of diminishing marginal product. The second one is average product, represented by AP. So average product of a factor is nothing but the total output produced per unit of a factor employed. So when you talk about average, it has to be taken in consideration with per unit of factor employed. So how much amount of output is produced per unit of a factor employed? So it is given like this: AP is equal to total product, which will be divided by the number of units of a factor employment. So we are finding the total output per unit of factor. How much per unit of factor can produce, that we are seeing in average product, where in this formula AP is the average product, Q is the, so this can be also represented by AP equals Q by L, where Q is the total output, L is the number of workers that is employed. So that is average product. How much of output is produced per unit of factor that is employed? That is the average product. The last one is marginal product. No, before coming to that, it will be seen, or it has been generally found that this average product, when more units of a factor are employed for production or for producing a commodity, the average product rises and then it falls. So that is the law of diminishing marginal product. So it is found out that in this average product, when more units of factor are employed for producing a particular commodity, the average product will rise and then it will fall. That is the diminishing marginal product. Last we have is marginal product, that is represented by MP. So what is marginal product? It is nothing but the marginal physical product of a variable factor. So take note of this variable factor. It is a variable factor. Physical product of this variable factor is the addition to the total physical output when an extra unit of the variable factor is used for production, and quantities of all other factors are kept constant or remain changed. So what is marginal product? So marginal product, which is related to marginal utility in case of consumers behavior, but for producer it is marginal product. So it is the addition to the total output or total physical output when an extra unit of variable factor or input is used for production. So when extra amount of inputs or factors or variable factor is used, it is adding to the total physical product. That addition is the marginal product. So it is given by MP equals change in Q divided by change in L, where MP is marginal product, change in Q is the change in total output, change delta L is represented by change in labor units employed, which is taken to be equal to 1. So this is the marginal product formula. MP equals delta Q divided by delta L, where delta Q is the change in total output and delta L is the change in labor unit employed, which is taken to be equal to 1. So it is the addition to the total physical output when an extra amount or an extra unit of variable factor is used for production, keeping all the other factors remaining unchanged. So those are the three concepts of a product.